rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. We're doing double duty on this Friday. With me now, we have R.C. Williams and Julianna Orman of Sherloc Market Research. We're going to be talking about stuff that I don't really understand, and they're going to help us understand it better. That is cryptocurrency. We're going to talk about the parallel economy. I really do believe, after speaking to Dave Rubin, I've kind of modified my thoughts on the parallel economy. I know this doesn't sound right for a conservative, but nonetheless, this is how I feel. I feel as though conservatives need to be willing to use the power of government to get some of these fools and these woke corporations in place. So I know a lot of you might disagree with me on that. I get that. But honestly, I wanted to bring both R.C. Williams and Julianna on because conservatives have to start thinking differently when it comes to our economy. And that's the parallel economy, when it comes to crypto markets, all of these things. And I need to start thinking differently. I realize that we have ceded far too much to the left. And so we have to build something that can be sustained, that can be relied upon, where we're not going to censor and close people out. Does that make sense, RC and Julianna? I mean, I think that's why I'm bringing you guys on. You guys have ideas about cryptocurrency, and so talk to me real quickly about. Actually, let me do this because I said I was going to do this before we started. I want to get your take. I'm interested in both of you guys' take on Elon Musk and this purchase of Twitter has gone down. He's kicked 3 executives out already. What's your take on this whole thing? Twitter, Elon Musk, so on, et cetera, before we get started.
Yeah, Carl, thanks for having us on. Elon Musk is a complicated topic. I think some people are figuring that out now. I was at a dinner last night, and this topic came up because the deal closed while we were at the restaurant, and people said, well, what do you think now? Is everyone free? I said, so here's the thing with Elon Musk that we figured out, and anyone can do this if they actually dig in and do their homework. What you're dealing with in Elon Musk is a libertarian elitist. So it's kind of an odd bird, almost like a pig on LSD, which is how we describe our China research. We were far ahead with where China was going before it happened. So the thing with Elon is you have to dig into his family, right? It's not the poor boy story made good. There were some weird and interesting connections there, and he's had those throughout his life. So while I think that some level of liberation of Twitter is good, as we're doing this, the word is that President Trump is actually going to be reinstated onto Twitter, and some of the executives who I think were standing in the way of free speech are now moved out of the way. I think we need to be cautious in moving forward and make sure that anything that Elon has said that he's going to do, he's held accountable to do it, and that he doesn't go off the rails in some weird direction. So just be cautious.
So I don't know. I'm sitting here wondering exactly what his motives are. We're all about storytelling. What's the story that we're being told about Elon? Is it true? Is it not true? I don't know. I've got a really big question mark about what's happening and why it's happening.
Okay, so honestly, you guys are in line with me. I have reservations on counting on any one person in the United States of America to be the safeguard of free speech and censorship. Although I will say that I'm glad the 3 that are that he kicked on their duff are out at Twitter for sure. I do think it is a victory for free speech to some extent. But I don't want to rely on one billionaire, especially given what you guys have just articulated here. I don't want to rely on that. I want free speech. I want a free society. I don't want any gatekeepers per se. I'm a Christian conservative, American that happens to be Black, but I'm willing to share. Listen, I don't care if there's atheists. I don't care if they're secularists, libertarians, Democrats, or whatever that have free speech as well. I don't want censorship. I do believe that, I believe my worldview, when explained, can prevail in society. I know atheists believe the same. Okay, let's go that route and not censor each other. So I don't like these major gatekeepers, if you will. But I will say this: this is so funny, and I'm not sure if you guys have seen this or experienced this or noticed this. When Elon Musk announced in the spring that he was buying Twitter, right away, like probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I'll tell you this briefly. I was on Twitter and literally thousands of followers were wiped away from me. I mean, while I was sitting in the middle of a tweet, the first time it was about 3,000. They had just wiped away. The second time happened a few years ago, where it was 2,000 while I was in the middle, literally just wiped out followers. So for the last maybe 3 or so years, no matter how much I tweeted, my numbers I didn't move an inch. Right. The moment Elon Musk announced that he would purchase Twitter, literally within minutes, I got 1,000 followers. It was insane. Now I can tell you this: my numbers started growing on Twitter when there was a back and forth on Twitter. The numbers stalled. Some Twitter followers here and there or whatever. And then just as of last night, ironically, and I didn't even pay attention to this. I was actually at a improv comedy show last night with my wife, which is a whole different story. But anyway, yeah, but so like right away I started, tweeting out some stuff, and actually I didn't notice until early this morning. I started tweeting out some stuff and noticed I was getting traction immediately. And that's when because I didn't pay attention to news last night. That's when I realized, okay, the deal must have gone through, and I read up on it, a little bit. But it's just fascinating to me how people with the right leadership will try to do the right thing and finally allow free speech to prevail. But I'm not sure if Elon Musk will curtail that or not. But honestly, I saw a difference instantaneously this morning. It's insane.
So, Carl, I'll share this on Twitter. I know we're going to cover a bunch on the podcast, but some people may have missed a couple of years ago. There was a pretty extensive story on Twitter's God mode.
Okay.
There is a mode of Twitter internally that allows you to see the entire board and in essence control everything. And the story was about abuse of God mode by employees. So the timeline you just described, a number of us, including me, went through something similar in various audience sizes. And it was interesting because about the time that Elon announced and then when the battle was happening, everything you said were the same things that we saw. And we brought up to some people, it's like, remember God mode and think about who has control of it. Mm-hmm. So now that the deal is officially closed and Elon Musk and his crew actually have control of it, are we going to see it not used anymore and see Twitter actually function as it was intended to function? That's the lingering question.
Okay, so explain to me quickly God mode. I think
Sure.
It's self-explanatory, but I'm not certain. So tell me what that is.
Sure. So within Twitter, and by the way, this is something that is standard within most of your major apps. I mean, I worked in the Silicon Valley for a number of years. There are modes of an application or a website internally that basically allow you to act as anyone or do anything or see the entire playing field. And you can make changes in real time, right? So this is how they try to control speech. Mm-hmm. They'll say, oh, we've got a problem here. This person is trending, which we did a show yesterday, Carl, and Google is already suppressing that. And they're saying that the link to it, because it happened to be on BitChute, is dangerous and malicious. So that's Google using their version of God mode. So that's basically how it works. And generally speaking, that access is very limited. But it seems like at Twitter, people were getting access to God mode that probably shouldn't have had it. And they were doing weird things. I don't like somebody, so I'm going to suppress them, basically.
RC, okay. I want you to, I got a follow-up question to this. This is fascinating to me. God mode. All right, so clarify this. Are you saying that there isn't necessarily this broad algorithm that's put in place, but literally people are perhaps at Twitter or were paying attention to specific people like yourself, and okay, these people are going to be a problem for our value system. I'm going to censor them as an individual. Like it's not some some software or something that's just grabbing conservatives or whatever, censoring conservatives. Is that it? And am I reading that, understanding that correctly?
So Carl, Juliana mentioned this a moment ago. The algorithm does exist, so that works. What we're saying is that there is another layer with God mode where that can be manipulated or stopped outright by anybody who has access. And so, generally speaking, when I worked in the Valley, in my roles, I had access to God mode versions of things, and they exist for everything. They exist for Google, they exist for Amazon, right? This is how Amazon's able to manipulate pricing and steal from vendors, and that's a whole nother story. But God mode for Twitter seems at times to have gotten into the wrong hands. And there was a lot of discussion about topics that you would generally think would surge and go viral, that for whatever reason just stalled or were suppressed. And we told people, this is you seeing God mode in action. And the wrong person has control of the keys here and shouldn't be doing that.
Wow, that's okay. That's fascinating. I didn't expect to go there, but this is why I bring people like you on to help people like me and the average everyday American understand stuff that frankly I don't understand. And so this is fascinating. But we're all impacted by this because all of these companies deal in free speech, or at least they're supposed to, and they're supposed to be neutral sites. They get tax benefits as a result of so-called being neutral sites, and they're not. You know what? Okay, so I want to get you guys' take on this real quick. I'm sorry. This is kind of leading me down a rabbit hole, if you will. What do you guys think of making these companies, or making them have to adhere to common carrier laws? Like a telephone company has to.
Right. So this is a great question, Carl, because this goes in line with Section 230 about what a news organization is, right? And so, or a publisher, these companies, social media companies, have basically said, oh, well, we don't police discourse or discussion in that way, so we're not a publisher. We're not subject to that. Yet all of the behavior, right? I think we're preaching to the choir here, but it's important to have on record so people understand how these things are manipulated. On record, all of these groups are functioning, including Google, by the way, just like a publisher, which would make them subject to government oversight or antitrust law. So it's interesting that they've been able to get away with it. The next logical question would be, why? Well, as we found in the crypto world, they're getting a lot of help from the people who are, quote unquote, duly elected.
That's right.
With interesting bipartisan legislation at different times that either suppresses or addresses the issue in a way that's favorable to those companies and not favorable to us as the general public or we the people.
Well, the government's getting what it is that they want.
Exactly. They legislate themselves to power, as Juliana always says. It's so true.
But they're also manipulating these media companies to garnish the information that they want, to do what it is that they want to do, to promote the propaganda that they want to promote.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is all right. So, okay. So, this is fascinating to me. All right. Cryptocurrency, RC, you have to help me understand this. Well, you don't have to, but that's why you're on the show. No. Okay. So cryptocurrency, good or bad? What should conservatives, what should patriots understand? I'll be honest with you. I get a little. We've invested in cryptocurrency some. So help me to understand that. Help me to differentiate between cryptocurrency and digital currency, if there is a differentiation. What should we know? What should we be concerned about? What should we be excited about?
So let me just say this real quick. Crypto in the right hands is wonderful. Crypto in the wrong hands is not. Go ahead.
That, as a foundation, Carl, Juliana is so right. The answer is both, because you asked if it's good or not, or good or bad. And the answer is both. It really depends on whose hands it's in. So let's set some baselines, because I think people get confused. And we've been on shows, and obviously we consume a lot of media in preparation for segments like this one. Let's get some things squared away.
Okay.
Digital currency, or central bank digital currency, is different than cryptocurrency. We'll come back to the CBDC in a bit, but let's set that standard first.
Okay.
The second one is that digital currency as a means of exchange, we've actually been on for years. And the question that we pose
Really?
Yeah, so here, we'll frame it for you in like 10 seconds.
Okay.
How much cash do you carry on you normally? Probably maybe $100 or so. So if you had to buy something of $500 or greater, you're probably using a card of some kind, right? Credit card, debit card. That is ones and zeros that when you log in to a bank, quote unquote, and you see numbers on the screen, those are in essence digital dollars.
Okay.
Right? So when we do our parallel economies presentation, we tell people you've already been living under it. And guess what? If they decide, Carl's got 10 grand in the bank, right? He goes to bed. He says, I haven't spent any money, so I'm good with my wife, so I'm going to sleep.
Right.
Carl wakes up the next morning, checks his bank account. He's got 5 grand. So Carl's freaking out. He calls the bank and they say, hey, congratulations. Your digital dollars are worth half of what they were yesterday. Have a nice day, Mr. Jackson. That can happen, right? So that's in bad hands. So digital currency already exists. The central bank digital currency system would eliminate alternatives that you currently have, like cash. That's right. And the government would control all of that monetary function. We'll come back to that in a second, because we want to talk about crypto too.
Okay.
So here's the thing. The majority of the world, as you know, does not use cryptocurrency. Many people are aware, but they become confused. Here, in essence, is what cryptocurrency is. It's another method of value exchange. Here's where it differs. Whereas when you use fiat currency, whether it's the digital version or actual, cash of some kind or whatever, there is usually a monitor, a government agency of some kind, or the Federal Reserve. People are watching this transaction happen, and they're involved. As we always joke, the government hates competition, right? So they want to be all in your business because they want to make sure they get their taxes or their exchange rates, right? The credit card companies and the government have this long-standing thing about fees, which are painful, right? With cryptocurrency, if RC and Julianna have a digital wallet with cryptocurrency in it, and we want to buy sponsorship on Carl Jackson's podcast, we can pay Carl directly in Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever cryptocurrency you prefer, and it's peer-to-peer. That means there is no middleman. No bank. The value is exchanged directly. So with that baseline understanding of what cryptocurrency is, you can then begin to understand why the government wants to regulate it. Because think about what just happened, Carl. Uncle Sugar isn't in the transaction anymore.
How do you let me start? That's a good way to frame it. How do you assess the value of it? That's one of the things that's very confusing to me.
Great question.
I understand that it's person to person. I like that idea, but how do you determine that $1 is $1, so to speak? That's what I don't understand.
Great question, Carl. So in the cryptocurrency world, you've obviously got a variety of cryptocurrencies. People have heard names like Ripple, XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. These are all common names that you would hear on a daily basis if you were to go to a cryptocurrency exchange like a Coinbase, right? So how is that value established? That also varies. Some cryptocurrencies are backed by nothing more than the full faith and credit of the community that exchanges them for value, and then can exchange them into fiat currency. Some others are what are called stable coins. So what that means is that they're backed by something tangible. It could be gold, it could be silver. That conversation is happening a lot right now. And actually, just a quick side note, because I think it will help the audience, is Kevin Freeman does a show called The Economic War Room on the Blaze Network. He did an episode with one of the founders of PayPal, who is an incredibly smart human being, and they talked about the future of the digital Texan. So the short version of that story is that the Republic of Texas, so any state can actually issue its own currency within its own borders. That's constitutional. But Texas has reserved the right to do that in a particular way that they can pretty much do whatever they want. A lot of people forget this about the Republic of Texas. They retained rights when they joined the Union, right? So what's been proposed in Texas is that if Carl Jackson and his wife had $100,000 in gold, they could put it on deposit with the Texas Bank Depository and use digital Texans, basically gold-backed cryptocurrency, for purchases. And then if Carl and his wife wanted their gold back, they could just go down to the repository, right, and say, give us our gold. And they'd say, great, give us your digital Texans. You would do that. They would give you your gold. And you guys would take your wheelbarrows or your freight train or whatever you have, and you get on your way, right? Wow, so that is an example of a stable coin or something backed. What we're finding now is that people are backing those cryptocurrencies with various things. There are cryptocurrencies that are backed by natural gas. There are cryptocurrencies that are backed by food production. That's a big one right now. We're going to get into that in a minute with the parallel economy, right? So we usually get people in two veins. They'll say, okay, great. So I totally understand the stable coin. It's backed by something tangible. I get it. Yep. But this Bitcoin thing, you're telling me it's not backed by anything except for the full faith and credit of the community. And we say, you're absolutely right.
That's exactly where I was going to go too.
Right.
Yeah.
Carl, think about this for a second. After 1971, what is the US dollar backed by?
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah. I mean, we left the gold standard. So yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So therein you have this where people say, I don't get it. I don't think it's safe. Well, listen, fiat currency hasn't been safe for over 50 years. Right. It is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, which anybody watching this, I think, would agree, is on shaky ground. Mm-hmm. This is why people will retreat to alternative currencies, which is what cryptocurrencies are, in an effort to either retain their value or grow it in some way. Hey, if it's worth more tomorrow than it is today, which is the experience that you and your wife had, you basically said, we're going to make some investments in cryptocurrency. And what in essence you were doing is you were hedging against something happening with fiat currency with the hope that your cryptocurrency would increase in value and you'd have some value on it. So in essence, there are your borders or boundaries, so to speak.
Okay. All right. That's good stuff. All right. I want to go back to the digital currency.
Sure.
That's basically it's a good point. When you talked about debit cards, you're absolutely, what's so funny? It's funny. I recall when I don't know who, whatever X bank or whatever told me, listen, this particular debit card is going to be so much more secure. We're kind of going in line with what Europe is doing. Their debit cards, credit cards are much more secure than ours. They have this chip, so on, etc. I can tell you that my identity has been taken so much more. As recently as last week, where I literally had to make a call while someone was trying to purchase, over they had already purchased $1,300 worth of something. And then they were trying to purchase another 600 something, whatever. And I was able to, call and catch the bank and, stop it and all this kind of nonsense. But that's happened to me several times. It's insane. So I do see that point. Like, we're already living in this digital currency world. And I must admit, it didn't click until you said that. And because I often wonder, like, okay, I have my money sitting in a bank. I use this card to withdraw it. These banks are going woke. Corporations are going woke. What if they decide it's not your money anymore?
That's right.
Carl, the incremental creep, which is what you're describing, is already happening. So, quick example. Carl and his wife have done well. The radio show grows, right? So your advertising triples. Well, now Carl says, man, look, I've got $500,000, right? So it moved into whatever bank you're in. Listen, we want to pull that out and put it into gold. If you went into the bank and said, hey, we want to withdraw $250,000 in cash from our account that has the money in there so that we can do what we got to do. Normally, you don't have to answer as to why. You just do it, right? They have you fill out your form and they give you your money. Do you know if you tried to do that today, they would call the cops on you? Because
yeah,
the
that's
banks
right.
don't have the money, Carl. They don't have it in there. People have gone to get cash to make purchases, $10,000, $5,000. The bank gives them the third degree, tells them they have to make an appointment or come back tomorrow. You're absolutely right. You not only don't have control of your money, but if you don't go to an ATM that your bank tells you, you're going to pay for the luxury to get your own money out. Right? People feel that pain occasionally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, it does make sense. You guys are helping me to make sense of this, and I really do appreciate it, because I'm sure that it's helping other people to understand it better as well, particularly as they subscribe to this podcast, The Carl Jackson Show, SalemPodcastNetwork.com, and wherever you get your podcast. I mean, this is I realize that something has to be done. I'm just like, I don't understand this stuff enough to understand where do we need to go. Let me ask you guys, how do we? Is there a way, or would you guys recommend going back? I understand that it's laissez-faire economy, but would you guys prefer going back to or getting rid of digital currency altogether? I'd rather deal with cash personally. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But I understand that our dollar isn't backed by gold. We're not on the gold standard. But it still seems to me that perhaps that's better than where we find ourselves today. Am I wrong?
So I think that you should have a diversification of your monies. Country monies, trade and barter monies, cryptocurrency monies, gold and silver monies, bullets and watches, right? These are all currencies that you can use when the time is appropriate.
So, Carl, Julianna, this is our prevailing belief when we talk to people about this, when we do workshops or seminars or we consult on things like this. You should absolutely have a diversity. We don't see a need to completely remove digital versions of currency from the equation. Cryptocurrency, believe it or not, is one of the most liberating things for people, because you've now eliminated any friction in the process of exchanging value. That's powerful, which again is why the government is in such a hurry to try and regulate it and get their hands in it. Remember, they hate competition. They don't want Carl Jackson and Julianna Ormond and R.C. Williams to exchange value without Uncle Sugar getting his cut. And that's governments all over the world. So in the right hands, us, peer-to-peer, it is incredibly powerful. But in the wrong hands, it does present danger. That's why we tell people to diversify. And honestly, even though we are bullish on technology in the right hands, let's talk about the realities of the world today. We do a daily newsletter called Rip from the Headlines, right? And one of the comments we made earlier this week is that you could, in the snap of a finger, be partying like it's 1859. Given the world. I mean, for people who know the joke, that was the Carrington event where the sun basically ejected something and it fried everything, right? And at the time, we didn't have much electricity in the United States, so it was bad, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. You should be prepared. And given the way that the world is going today and who's running it, we know that God's in control, but, he's got things that he needs to get done. So the waters are bumpy. And,
Can you tell them the story about Russia and how we shut off their monies and how he backed? Go ahead. Sure.
And the Russia example that Julianna is talking about in Ukraine is actually an excellent example of what the government will do. So diversification is important. You should have precious metals. Absolutely. You should have items to trade and barter. You should have stocks of things that you would need. If you haven't been to the grocery store lately, you can see what's coming. And generally, Carl, we're 6 months to a year out in our forecasts. And we can tell you this, and then we'll address the Russia-Ukraine thing. What we're seeing, if the midterm elections do not go the way that we need them to go, and we do not hold people accountable, 2023 is going to be a very difficult year to live in. We're already seeing the leading indicators that we saw 6 months ago that we told people about. We're like, energy is going to be a challenge. Food's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
The joke that we told yesterday is
Right.
that we can't even get, when it comes to fertilizer, we can't get that right either. Basically, we can't get right. That's how bad it is right now.
Yeah.
And so, people need to be thinking that way. Things around community, that's your self-government. Our pastor, Paul Blair from Liberty Pastors Movement, talks about this. There is self-government, family government, church government, and civil government. It's upside down right now. And when the other three things don't work well, civil government takes over. That's part of the reason we're in the situation we're in now. So we need to get our own houses in order and then work within our communities to make sure that house is in order so that we can continue to function and thrive if things change.
I was just going to say, I mean, considering your financial forecast, I'm there too. I think the crap is going to hit the fan, so to speak. All of the damage that's been done to the economy, I think we're in for some pain and suffering. And I hate to be a downer when it comes to my listeners, but I do want them to understand where we are. I want them to be as prepared as possible for what's to come. I'm also concerned that we're okay. I think we're going to do well as conservatives in this election cycle. I can tell you what I'm concerned about. This is kind of a side note that I'm bringing into the conversation. But I can tell you that what I'm concerned about is the 2023 narrative when you have Republicans that'll be in charge of the House, no doubt, quite possibly the Senate. And it's looking more and more like that every day, that will control both chambers of Congress. But the crap is still going to hit the fan, and people don't understand without the White House that Republicans will have the ability to be able to stop the bleeding or slow the bleeding, but the crap is still going to hit the fan. Things are going to get worse. So I'm concerned that if Republicans don't have the right narrative, what's going to happen is people will reelect some of the morons on the left. And then as a result, the economy will tank again. A lot of people will run into the arms of communists, and our society will just be, America as we know it, will just be done, finito, not coming back.
So, Carl, we would encourage people, as a market research and intelligence firm, we deal with this. We encourage people to study the panics of 1873, 1893, that period after the Civil War. The United States went through a series of economic panics, and one of the worst depressions prior to 1929 happened in the late 1890s. And exactly what you're describing. And at that point, Republicans had actually won the White House. Grover Cleveland completed a term. William McKinley was elected president. So you had a Republican pro-business.
Holy crud, you guys really are nerds on this stuff.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. I'm a nerd with politics. You guys are, I mean, honestly, I appreciate you guys. I'm throwing stuff at you, and you guys are just like, yeah, that's good stuff. Good stuff.
It's the reason that we share that is because you will see the parallels of today. Much like in 2016, we encouraged people. If people said this has never happened before with Donald Trump, and we're like, so you are incorrect. We encourage you to look at the elections of 1824 and 1828, and you will see exactly the same thing. That was the rise of Andrew Jackson. Whether you hate him or love him isn't relevant here. The time and the result were similar. And again, if you look at the panics that happened in that period, you will see much of the same thing. And Carl, the reason that we bring that up is because that's where communism and socialism began to get a foothold. And then in that period, leading up to Woodrow Wilson's election, who is the ultimate piece of garbage in human history,
right.
Argue, right? But that led to this proliferation of it, and many of the modern organizations like Planned Parenthood that we see today, that in Uncle Tom 2, they very accurately describe, are creations of rich liberals.
Right.
You know, we're in a place now where if we're not careful and we don't hold people accountable, what you said a minute ago will absolutely happen, and everybody will be pointing the finger at everybody else. Meanwhile, things like war make a ton of money. And there's
Yeah.
always opportunity, which is why you're seeing this happen now.
So I would like to bring the conversation back to how Putin is stabilizing his currency because of gold, right?
Right.
How gold is the same price around the world.
Yeah. So, Carl, this is important because it's going to help people understand why being able to diversify and why cryptocurrency and precious metals are so important. So let's preface this by saying that regardless of how you feel or what you think about Vladimir Putin or Ukraine, your feelings aren't relevant in this conversation because it's factual and it's tactical. I'll explain. When Putin decided that Russia was going to move on Ukraine, the first thing that world government, I'll just say it, right? The EU and all these other people, world government decided they were going to do is sanction him, including cutting him off from the international banking system.
Right.
That is the SWIFT system for people who don't have a reference. Anytime that you send or receive money internationally, you will see either a SWIFT code or an IBAN number. They're basically the same thing. Okay. So Putin knew this was coming. And if you go back and look at history, you will see that he did two things really well. He started stocking up on gold and other precious metals. He already controlled a fair amount of oil, and he got deep into cryptocurrency. So fast forward. The world cuts Putin off from the banking system. Ukraine also takes some of this on the chin too, right?
Right.
But Putin was smart enough to be able to move $450 billion in cryptocurrency in that period, thumbing his nose at the world that was trying to stop him. And he backed the ruble with gold. You know what? Again, regardless of what you think about the guy, that was a masterstroke move in preparation. And that should be an abject lesson for everybody listening to this right now or watching right now.
That is such a good point because you look at, listen, I was just looking at my tip sheet earlier this morning, and I'm looking at Germany, who are now complete idiots. I'm sorry. Just complete idiots. But they're all of these woke morons in the EU and our NATO allies that, where I'm like, you morons are going to get us into war by buying into this green climate change nonsense. But they were tearing down some of their solar power, wind power, and they're going to build some coal mines or whatever. They're going to refashion their coal mines. And I'm like, yeah, you morons. You by buying into all this crap, Putin, you were going to try to tame Putin. You did the exact opposite by buying into complete and utter stupidity. And so now I'm starting to see them backtrack. And I'm like, you're right, regardless of how you feel about Putin and the war. And I won't go down that track, but the facts are the facts. He made some smart moves where initially I'm sitting there thinking, not so sure this is going to work out for him. And then you see the ruble start freaking skyrocketing. And I'm like, oh my God, these guys are cutting them off. And he seems to be doing pretty well. And the ruble is doing very well. So anyway, all that to just confirm what you were saying.
Yeah, Carl, and to share with Ukraine. So everything that's happened in Ukraine, a lot gets talked about the craziness that's going on, right? And how people are suffering. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. When all of that went down and Ukraine was basically cut off as well, guess what people were able to do? They were still able to use cryptocurrency to buy food and to buy fuel, right? Because Ukraine as a country was in a similar boat. It's obviously got a ton of bad parts to it. We know that a lot of bad stuff runs through Ukraine. It has been the world's repository for money laundering and all these bad things. But there are human beings in Ukraine who are good, God-fearing people who were also prepared and had been working in a system that dealt heavily in cryptocurrency for a long time. So when the bump in the road came, they had alternatives and they were still able to function in spite of what was going on around them. And that should get talked about more because it speaks to the power of what we've been talking about on this show.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because one of the things I got to tell you guys, I'm not in the same place that I was with the Russia-Ukraine war. I don't ever want to go to war. If we can avoid it, I said I wouldn't go there, and here I am going there. So I don't ever want to go to war. If we can avoid it, and I felt like this was totally avoidable. This Russia-Ukraine conflict. The first thing we could have done is not selected Joe Biden. In my opinion, but there were multiple things that were done after that where this didn't have to be. And it's obvious to me that the Biden administration wants to keep this thing going. I don't even blame Zelensky. I know a lot of people are hating Zelensky and this guy is begging for money and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that he's begging for money. I understand that he's annoying. I understand that we shouldn't be just giving him money willy-nilly. But I'm like, what else is the guy going to do? If we're going to be idiots and just give this guy money willy-nilly, and he, as corrupt as that country is trying to save their country, I don't necessarily blame him. But I always think of the Ukrainian people, going back to what you said, RC, and it's funny that you say that because I remember briefly reading something about that and the independence of the Ukrainian people, cryptocurrency, all of this kind of stuff. They have tons of young people in Ukraine that really loved freedom, and kind of Western society type freedom. It was something apparently that Putin despised in some sense, but Putin seemingly learned from some of these people. So I always, regardless, I hate the war, and I hate the leaders, frankly, of both countries. Just to be frank, they annoy the crap out of me. But I always feel bad for the Ukrainian people who, from what I read, were really people that just love freedom, despite their corrupt as all get out government.
I think that if we ask any of the people of any of these countries, if they want what's happening to be happening, we'd all say no. So, why is it happening? And just for your audience to know, we are at war. Klaus Schwab says that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. We're sitting back like we're not in the middle of a huge war. We've got a number of wars that are happening around us, but we, the people, are sleeping. We need to wake up to the fact that they are attacking us, and we're just sitting here like sitting ducks, pretending like nothing's happening. There's a lot happening. Just because we're not aware of it, it's happening.
Okay, I got to tell you guys real quick. This is a testimony to what you guys do. I did not expect to be talking about crypto this long. I expected the podcast to be over, frankly, and I expected to move on to the parallel economy. But this is a testament to how well you guys explain the cryptocurrency, digital currency. You guys have done a great job. I think you turned me into at least a temporary nerd on this issue because I want to find out more about it. But I do want to move on in the time that we have remaining, because I do want to get your take on the parallel economy, because I do see this as necessary. And I want an honest opinion from you guys, because I feel like, yes, we need to establish, those of us that love freedom, we need to establish a parallel economy. But I got to be honest with you. I'm also of the opinion that those that have violated free speech principles, like PayPal, for instance, who I'm not actually, I would expect you guys to know, but all right. So they were charging this $2,500 fine to people with misinformation. In other words, people that disagree with their ideology. Supposedly that had gone by the wayside. Come to find out this morning, that isn't the case. They're still implementing a $2,500 fine. So please, people, do not use PayPal. But I feel like these people, there should be antitrust laws established. I want to move on to a parallel economy, but I also believe, and you guys tell me if I'm a complete hypocrite for this, if you violated principles, if you violated antitrust laws, I still think these people should pay the price as we move on.
So I always say you vote with your money, right? I'm not going to give my money to the enemy because they're using my money against me. So your parallel economy is really about, spending money with a group of people that are of the same mind, the same belief system. Sorry to the other companies, but I'm not giving my enemy my money.
Yeah, Carl, I mean, speaking to that for a moment, and then we'll lay this out. we'll lay this out for everybody, is Sherloc as a company, and this is actually on our site. We talk about the things that we will and won't do as a market research and technology business. And frankly, we won't name the companies, but we have turned down money, large amounts of money, to do work around the fourth industrial revolution, the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Bodies. The way that we describe that to people is, Carl and his wife buy a smart fridge so they can see inside, and it's got a little digital board on it so they can write notes to each other because they love each other, right? But then one day, Carl is driving and he gets a notification from his Amazon app that says he's low on milk. Does he want Amazon to just go ahead and deliver it from Fresh Market? And Carl says, well, I don't feel like going, so sure. Then they get there and they say, well, Carl, would you like us to go inside and put it in your fridge for you?
Wow.
Yeah, okay, I guess so, right? And then the next thing you know, it's time to buy more milk. And it's like, Carl, you've had too much cheese this week. No milk for you, right? Those are the things that we refuse to do because we know where it ends, okay? And that's important for everyone to keep in mind, and the importance of the parallel economy. You are 1,000% right that every bad actor who has done this, PayPal is at the top of that list because you're absolutely correct. They said, oh, we're not doing the $2,500 fine anymore, and it's still there, right? Because that's what these pieces of garbage do. They should be made to pay the maximum penalty and not be able to skate out like John Rockefeller did, which a lot of people don't realize. Standard Oil was broken up because it was antitrust, right? Everybody remembers that story.
Right.
Do you know that he got infinitely richer because of that breakup?
Really?
He owned controlling interest in all the subsidiaries, Exxon, Chevron, BP, right? So antitrust worked in breaking them up, but it didn't address the follow-on issue. We have to be vigilant. These guys need to pay maximum penalty, and then we need to make sure they keep paying if they try something slick. Okay, so now that we've set that standard, when we talk about parallel economies, critically important, right? So a parallel economy, in essence, is you working with like minds and interests for economic growth. So as you said, conservatives as a group, we should come together and work together because we do business with people we know, like, and trust. So you create these communities. Now, there are people out there that are working to do parts of it, right? So we've got some payment systems that have come up. We've got social media platforms. I'm still not entirely sure why we can't figure out the bank part. Somebody asked us about that at the beginning of this week, and they're like, what's the problem? And we're like, your guess is as good as ours. The only thing that we can come up with, and this is a bit of an Achilles heel for us as conservatives, is that sometimes we are so independently minded that aggregating our forces and resources to get something done can be difficult, right?
Yeah,
so
it makes total
when
sense.
When you think about it, we when we do our presentations, we talk about parallel economies and the power of a nation state. So we talked about what a parallel economy was. People always ask us, what's a nation state? And it's like, it's not the physical location or thing that you think of. You need three components in order for it to work, right? You need people who have like minds and interests, who are willing to work together and have a desire for sovereignty. If you have those three things, congratulations on your nation state. That could be your house. That could be your community. Carl, if you're part of a private Facebook group, congratulations on your nation state, right? It's not geographically limited. So the two of them go hand in hand. If you've got the group of people in whatever form they're in, and you can agree that working together for economic betterment is something worth doing, then you move forward. That's any farmer's market or a community center or an old-fashioned town hall where things get done. Those are parallel economies and nation states, right? So once you establish that baseline, then including a way for us to conduct commerce, so money, right? Or a banking system of some kind. All of those things get layered on, but there are these alternative universes that actively work. We have a partner now where we talked about the crypto earlier. They back theirs with food production. So that community will set up a food forest for you. They'll manage it for you, and they'll help you to sell the overage that you have. So somebody who is in need, right, can do that. So,
but But now we've got the government asking everybody, if you've got extra land
Jesus.
that we can use to be able to grow food, like they even want to know what's in your backyard. Do you have enough dirt back there to be able to grow some food? How about we grow food as a community of people, and we trade and barter our food, and we take care of ourselves, because we don't necessarily need a grocery store, do we?
You know what? This is Gabe, if you can help me out, I'm getting major feedback and a major delay here. This, in my mind, this is kind of the Christian principle here. I mean, we should. A lot of people mistake, I think it's Acts 2 for socialism, when it's not about socialism at all. It's about we as believers essentially taking care of ourselves. It's amazing to me how people read into what they want to read into when it comes to biblical texts in order to justify their worldview. Sadly, it's happening in the church big time. But nonetheless, yeah, I love this idea of being able. I love the idea of being able to. This makes me less fearful, to be honest with you, of crypto, being able to attach it to, what do you call it? Stable currency.
Stable coins. Yeah, something tangible.
I mean, I absolutely love that idea. All right. So just more things on the banking. It is fascinating that you mentioned the banking. The banking is something that I'm concerned about, because now some of these banks have merchant codes for Second Amendment lovers. And honestly, they're going to use that across the board. It's going to be people that conservatives that they hate, any libertarians, free speech, any patriot-minded people. These people are going to use ESG scores. They're going to use merchant scores. I think it's very imperative that we get a banking system. Your point totally makes sense. Now, I'm thinking back to Elon Musk, and I hate thinking this way, but I don't see an option right now. Does a conservative billionaire need to step up and start this process, get this thing going?
It's a great question, Carl. And while I can't go into a ton of detail right now, we have actually been working on this with a group of people. And again, I'll share this from us, is that what we've had to go through to establish this in such a way that people can be truly free from the codes that you're talking about, because that's just the tip of the iceberg, Carl. You know that, right? Then it's going to be what you think. And we'll go through that example in a minute about how this leads to the social credit score in China. But what we've had to go through to ensure that people will truly be free from those things, and they will also be safe and secure, has been a hard mountain to climb. We've been doing it the majority of this year. We've been working on it, and we've had to go to multiple domiciles and workarounds and planning to try and get this thing done. That's all I can share right now, but I agree with you, is that we are quickly coming up on a time, which is why we went ahead and just grabbed it and said, let's run with this and see what we can do, because if nothing else, we made an effort to give people an alternative who think, feel, and believe like we do, so that we can continue to work together and we can thrive.
It's almost as if big government and these radical left-wing corporations want to make sure that there's no competition or alternatives out there. It sounds like, but I think this is becoming this parallel economy. I had someone speak to me a few years ago. He was like, Carl, we need to get a website together. We need to be able, those people that love freedom, we need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to purchase from each other. We need to be able to figure out deals with each other. It doesn't matter if it's the Republicans in California working with the Republicans in Florida, or conservatives, patriots, whatever however you want to frame them. We need to be able to do this, because the crap is going to hit the fan. And he was talking to me about this a few years ago, and I was in total agreement with him. But not a lot has transpired. This is starting to happen just because the federal government and who's installed in the federal government has been so radical that it's starting to wake people up. My fear is that is it too late? And I don't think it is, as long as we have people like you guys out there and freedom lovers out there. But I feel like we really need to get the ball rolling on when it comes to the parallel economy and just being able to buy and purchase amongst freedom loving people. I don't care if liberals, Democrats, I don't care if they want to participate in the parallel economy with us. What I don't want is for them to say, you have these beliefs, so you're not going to be able to participate. I'm like, nah, I'll take anybody's money. It's money. Money is money. Money is money. All right. It's as simple as that to me. But the government and these woke corporations are using their power to basically force us to believe the way that they do. And I hate it. That's not freedom. That isn't America. And I want to get past it. So anything that we can do to help promote a parallel economy, I definitely want to make sure that we do.
So, the left media now is talking about the white female Christian nationalists and how we, are a threat to what's happening in our society. And I just want to say, as a Christian nationalist, I believe in our country, and I believe that God put us here for a reason.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But now they want to demean me and say that, we're an enemy. The MAGA people are enemies. And it's like, wait a minute, how did loving our country and loving God make us the enemy?
It's a fascinating, it's fascinating to me how the left has to constantly create these groups to demonize, but it's indicative. This is what they always do. It's divide and conquer. It's also fascinating to me that every other nation around the world, any other citizen can be proud of their nation except the United States of America. It's absolute. Yet people from all over the world are willing to risk life and limb, and even their children being, raped by Mexican cartels in order to get them into the United States of America. It's insane. It's almost as if I feel like this is why the parallel economy is important too, because it's time to not take some of these morons as seriously as we have to, it seems to me right now.
So, Carl, a couple of things here that tie into this, and they're really important. Julianna talked about how we're now being targeted, and the words are changing. We'll give you a sneak preview of our next keynote presentation and curriculum. The title is going to be Hostis Humani Generis. That's Latin, and it translates to enemy of mankind. Here's what's going on, and Biden really accelerated this in the speech that he gave in Philadelphia. He talked about MAGA Republicans being extremists, and now the Latin term is now being twisted to be enemy of the state. What they are doing is preparing to target you based on the fact that you are a Christian, a believer, or you have any national pride whatsoever. Once they can designate you as that, do you guys remember the Patriot Act? You remember that?
Yes.
Everyone should go back and read it. Here's why. Once you are labeled as an enemy of the state, people may not know this term, you get black bagged, right? You can disappear for no reason or any reason at any time. And much like the people who are sitting in jail because of January 6th, you have no right to due process. This is what they're working to do, which is why we're expanding the Parallel Economies presentation to include this. That's part one.
Yeah.
Part two goes back to the importance of a parallel economy and how the government is weaponizing. Quickly, I just want to share with people, we've been doing work on a groundbreaking cryptocurrency case, the U.S. versus Randall Crater. And what we've shown is how these government agencies collude. The FBI, the DOJ, the SEC, and the CFTC, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, they're colluding with Congress, right, to pick winners and losers in cryptocurrency. Carl, what we talked about at the beginning in the freedom, they're trying to cut it off at the pass. And we strongly encourage people to read into this and read our expose. Here's the reason why. Randall Crater was taken to the cleaners. The government has thrown the kitchen sink at him. And the only reason they've done it, he didn't do anything wrong. All the evidence was suppressed, and we have it all. We've just linked to it all. The reason that they went after him is because he chose to fight them. Because he said, I'm innocent. I want my day. I'm not going to go down for something I didn't do. And the government has basically thrown the kitchen sink at him and his family. And it's insane. But this is what they're trying to do. While Randall and his family are going through this, and that's painful for them and for many of us that read the story and have done the work, it's even bigger than that. This is a war against you and us and everybody who wants any type of economic freedom. If the government gets
no parallel economies.
They're trying to cut it off, and that's one of the ways. So part 3 of this is where that ends, right? And we talked about this briefly at the beginning, the central bank digital currency, right? The Atlantic Council, which is a super liberal think tank, actually has a tracker for the progress of central bank digital currencies around the world. Carl, let that sink in for a second.
So they're already rolling it out.
Yeah.
The banks already have it. It's already in certain countries.
Yeah, if you go to the NSA search engine, which is Google, and you type in Atlantic Council CBDC, you will find the link, and you can go and see for yourself how countries are doing, what they're experimenting with, and what phase they're in rolling this thing out. We talked about why it's inherently dangerous, right? Hang on a sec. We talked about why it's inherently dangerous. When the government has that much control over you, they can decide one day you can't do something. So the example that we always give, and Carl, we're going to put you on the spot here, is so Carl lives in China, right? And he's walking and he's thinking about crossing the street on a red light. At the last minute, Carl decides not to cross the street on a red light, right? Light turns green, he crosses the street. Once he does, he gets an alert on his phone that his social credit score has dropped. And Carl's like, well, hey, why did my social credit score drop? Well, Mr. Jackson, you thought about crossing the street on a red light. You've now committed a thought crime. If you don't believe that that's true, think about what you posted on social media that either got deleted or suppressed and wonder what happened, okay?
Right.
So Carl's kind of upset. He says, man, look, I'm going to go have some pizza and a beer because I'm feeling kind of bad here. He goes in. He can't buy anything. You know why? Carl was a bad boy. And he was thinking about crossing the street on a red light, and he had pizza and beer last week. So no pizza and beer for Carl. No, you're going to cross the street. So then you get a call that your dad is sick. You're in Shanghai. Dad is in Guangzhou. You've got to travel. So you go to buy a ticket, and they tell you, you can't. Your travel is restricted, Carl, because you were a bad boy, and you thought about crossing the street on a red light. Guys, that's not fantasy. That is the social credit score reality in China today.
Yeah.
And the central bank digital currency is the entrance to that. It only gets worse from there.
You know what's crazy is part of me is pissed off that we've taken so long to be able to and even myself, to be able to recognize this stuff and see what they're doing. I used to clown people when they would talk about globalism and the takeover, and I'm like, oh my God, just shut up. Let's just fight for freedom here. But it's true. These people are so they've been so vigilant to be evil and controlling, and we're so far behind the 8 ball. Another concern that I have, and we'll close it up with this, and I want to get you guys' response to this.
Sure.
How do you even get Americans to love freedom enough that this topic is important to them?
Ooh. Wow. So yeah,
I was just about to say most people don't even wake up until the threat is at their door. So we're trying to knock on everyone's door, going threat. You're listening, like.
Carl, the flag behind us is the Gadsden flag,
That's
right? And so you can't see the words, but it says, don't tread on me. Most Americans have seen the flag. They don't necessarily understand what it means. The words are to be taken literally, as in, don't tread on my freedom.
That's right.
Right? One of the things that we do in our presentations is we reference history. And much like we did on the show with you today, is we do it in such a way where people can digest it. Because a lot of times people say, oh, American history, it's too much, I can't do it, right?
Right.
So we put it into bite-sized nuggets, and we highlight the things that are most important. Here's what a lot of times spooks people, and they all learned it in American government and school, they've just forgotten it. The Revolutionary War, the war for independence in the modern United States, as it stands today, was fought by 3% of the population. Okay, that means 97% of the people who were here during colonial times did not fight in the war for independence.
Right.
Historically, that is the case for battles, right? So let's fast forward to today. How do we help the majority of Americans understand? Shows like we're doing today are one step. The education that we provide to people is another. But as Juliana just mentioned, that knocking on the door, or as we call it, the hand-to-hand combat, in talking to people, dropping a nugget on them. This is why we produce the content that we do, is a step in the right direction. And if we keep sounding the bell, which biblically we're called to do, right? Because if Noah wouldn't have done it, none of us would be here, right?
Sure.
We're called to do this. Then I think people are in the phase now, generally speaking, where they're like, something is wrong. I now know something is wrong. My friend was telling me this 6 months ago, but now I know something's wrong. I'm paying too much. I'm doing this. Now people are starting to wake up. What's going to be there for them? What is the beacon or the lighthouse going to be for people who are lost? Because, Carl, as we mentioned a minute ago, if we don't get things right here, even if we do, 2023 is going to be a rough ride. And for many people, it will be the first time that they are homeless, or they are hungry, or they are thirsty, and they don't know a way out. What's there to catch them? It's the watchmen and the watchers like us who have been sounding the alarm that have the tools that they're going to need. So as much as it pains me to say this, the thing that's going to wake the majority of Americans up is a cataclysmic event that literally shows up at their front door. We got a taste of that in 2020 with the peaceful protests. Right. And when it came to people's doors, they're like, oh, wait a minute. No, I didn't sign up for that, man. Refund the police.
Right.
I didn't want that. It's going to take that. And, we this week in the Rip from the Headlines newsletter, we actually invoked the doomsday clock, which we rarely do that in any research that we do. It's pretty serious if we do. We're 100 seconds to midnight. Midnight on the doomsday clock means nuclear war. We are 100 seconds to midnight. And if people think, oh, well, if Russia uses a limited tactical nuclear weapon, it's going to be okay. So here's the thing. It won't. No. Here's what happens. If that happens, anybody who's got a grudge against anybody else is gonna take a shot. So what most people don't realize is that in 2014, 2015, we were a couple of seconds to midnight because India and Pakistan were about to go at each other.
Yeah.
Disputed region. Kashmir, China and India have an issue. Don't think for 1 minute that if something happens like that it won't be systemic. And that's what people need to understand. We don't want that to happen. We are with you, Carl. War is people who haven't seen violence, or both Julianna and I have seen that in our childhood. No person should ever go through that. It is painful and it changes you. We don't want people to go through that. We don't want war, but we want people to understand that if you allow the people who are in control now to stay in control, that is where you will end up, and the result you will not like. It'll be unlike anything you've ever seen before.
All right, guys, good stuff, man. We got to end it there. I didn't think this podcast would go near this long, to be honest with you. I was like, okay, I'm going to get my nerd feet. I'm going to understand this a little better. This has been a fascinating conversation with you guys. I love, here's the deal. I love learning. I mean, and I've been educated through this podcast, and I'm sure that plenty of other listeners will too. Obviously, the parallel economy, cryptocurrency, you guys have helped to explain it better. And honestly, I feel as though both are more imperative than ever before. So anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys coming on with me. Plug your stuff here before we get out of here. Where are all the places that people can go to find you and to learn more on crypto, parallel economy, and everything that you guys do and are up to?
So Carl, first we want to thank you. God bless you for the work that you're doing. We're fans of yours, and you're an amazing guy. So thank you for doing the great work that you're doing and helping to get the word out.
Thank you.
If people want to learn more about Sherloc, they can go to investinanswers.com. That's investinanswers.com. That will give you an idea of the type of work that Sherloc as a market research company does. Okay. Our publication, Sherloc Exposes, that's our Substack. They can go to sherlockexposes.com and Sherloc is spelled without a K. So SherlocExposes.com will get them to our Substack. We have also created a locals community for the parallel economy. So for those who don't know, Rumble, the video app, also owns Locals, which is a place where like minds can get together and create communities that are protected and share information. We have created one of those for the parallel economy and the stuff we teach as well. People can go there if they just go to yourparalleleconomy.com. It will take them to the main page. They can get signed up. There's a welcome message for people when they're in the community, and we're constantly updating it with more information on parallel economies, nation states, what's going on in the world. And then when we do special presentations or teaching, people can access it there as well. They can access most of it for free. If they want to become a member and support the community, they're totally welcome to do that. Those are the ways that people can reach us. Much like you, Carl, we're trying to figure out the best ways to reach as many people as possible in a way that they're comfortable and just get them awakened and moving so they can get others to do the same.
All right, guys, listen, it's been a pleasure. It's been fascinating. It's been a learning experience. I'm going to check some of this stuff out myself. I want to be better informed when it comes to these topics, frankly. You know, I've sometimes it's easy to shy away from topics when you're not well versed on them, but it takes reading and it takes people like you guys teaching and understanding better. So I definitely do appreciate it. Guys, please be sure to subscribe to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. You can do so by going to thecarljacksonshow.com. You can also go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com. Wherever you find podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble, please subscribe, like, and share. It'll help us out greatly. Find me on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. That is The Carl Jackson Show. Support Mike Lindell. Support My Pillow. You can use the promo code CARL, C-A-R-L. We spell it the correct way, RC. So C-A-R-L. For those of you that are listening, mypillow.com. Click on that radio listener square, and you guys can get a break on the Percale bed sheets, the Giza Dream sheets. Right now, they have a 3-piece towel set. Normally sells for $49.99, but for my listeners, only $19.98. MyPillow.com. Click on that radio listener square. Use the promo code Carl. Also, give them a call if you prefer, or give them a call if you prefer. 1-800-858-0263. And until next time, guys, don't grow weary doing good, and God bless you.